Okay, and welcome back year 10 to our USA topic, and we're looking at theme 2, which is all about religion and race. And we have done religious fundamentalists, so we did the monkey trial, we did looking at a lesson looking at Native Americans and assimilation, and now we're going to look at how does attitudes towards Native Americans change. But can we all just marvel at my whiteboard? I've tried to change it up, so I'm away from a book, I'm on a whiteboard because I'm cool. Okay, so as always, let's start with our questions, because we can't just forget the information, because if we forget the information, what is the point? So those are the questions for you to give a go at. Remember, these are worth 1 point because you did them fairly recently, then 2 points, then 3 points. So we're looking at crime and punishment and Germany and crime and punishment again. Okay, so pause this, give yourself a chance. I might just read them because my handwriting is awful. What happens to Native Americans? Where were Native Americans forced to live? What religion were Native Americans taught? What happened after the monkey trial? Who hated evolution? List 2 acts, so laws which limited immigration. What change did Henry VIII, that's meant to say, make which increased crime? What's the name of a communist who attacked the Weimar government called? And then what caused poverty to increase in the early modern period? Oh, look at me getting emails. Oh, 2 emails. I'm popular. Alright, pause this and give yourself a chance to answer them. So, here are the answers. Okay, so what happened to Native Americans? They were assimilated. This is a posh word for changed, in a way. Changed to become American. I'm going to put American in inverted commas because, there's no one way to be an American, but this is how they thought. Where were Native Americans forced to live? So they were forced to live on reservations. Remember, they owned at one point all of America, and then they were forced to live on these tiny, tiny little areas in America. Then what religion were Native Americans taught? Christianity, but mainly Protestantism, because remember the WASPs. Look at that handwriting, amazing. What happened after the monkey trial? Evolution, education. So that's meant to say was banned elsewhere. Okay, so it started in Tennessee and then it expanded to other countries like Mississippi. Who hated evolution? Religious fundamentalists. List 2 acts, so you could have any one of these. 1917 starts with a literacy test. I always think that's quite an easy one to remember because it's all about language, and if you think about immigrants, maybe they don't speak a language. Then you've got the Quota Act, so you've got Emergency Quota Act, which is 3% of 1910, and then you've got 2% of 1890. And then you've got 1929 Immigration Act. Again, easy one to remember because, well, Immigration Act, and that limits it to 150,000. Alright, then you've got what change did Henry VIII make, which increased crime. Remember, this is all about heresy. So we actually, he starts the Reformation, which introduces Protestant religion into England in a much more concrete and formal fashion. What was the name of a communist who attacked the Weimar government called? And remember, Rosa Luxemburg. And can you remember what group she had or led? Spartacists. Well done. And then what caused poverty to increase? You could say inflation rising, population rising, the fact there was sheep farming, or you could say dissolution of the monasteries. Okay, and we're going to get started. Okay, so we are looking at how did attitudes towards Native Americans change. Alright, so I'm going to draw a quick picture showing what a Native American looked like, and then you can, actually no, you start off. Tell me what a Native American life was like. It was like before assimilation. Now I know, but Native Americans are just normal people, completely different life. But this is a question that we're going to be asked in the exam, or we're going to have to know for the exam, so we have to take it as a general idea. What was a general Native American's life like? Although that is a very, very complicated term. Okay, so I'm going to draw a picture here. So they've got a bow and arrow. There's loads of other people with them. I'm going to draw them with their long hair because a few tribes had long hair. They weren't all girls, not like this. Right, I'm going to draw them thinking of something. I'm going to draw a name here. Write a name, sorry. And then, so what I'd like to do is tell me what sort of each picture here is representing about the Native American's life. So they have different names, even different languages sometimes, quite often. This is about their beliefs. What sort of things did they believe? They were very spiritual, and they lived in tribes. And then I'm also going to draw this picture here. This is the USA. And then what am I showing here? What's this? What are they doing? What was their life like? Oh, you can't see it. There you go. What was their life like? Well, they were very nomadic, weren't they? Remember, they were moving around. They moved around the USA and they lived in teepees. Okay, now what I'd like you to do, I would like you to tell me what happened to Native Americans' lives. Right, so what happened to Native Americans' lives? Well, they were assimilated, weren't they? So what I'd like you to do now is tell me how each of these things were changed So, what happened to their spirituality? Well, they had to believe in Christianity. Clothes were changed. They had to wear a shirt and tie. Hair was changed. Even where they lived were changed. You know, they weren't allowed to live in teepees. They had to live on reservations now. So instead of being nomadic, they're allowed to live on very, very small areas. Okay, now could you please answer the question, how were they assimilated? So how? Okay, well, they went to boarding school, didn't they? Okay, they went to boarding school. Right, so now this is very, very important because that is going to change later. So we're going to need to know that they were changed in boarding schools. Okay, let me just pause that. Okay, so in a second, I'd like you to answer this question. How would Native Americans become citizens? But first off, I'd like to just have a think about that word citizens. When have we learned about that term before? When have we learned about that term before, and what does it mean? Okay, well, what it means is having the rights of that country. Okay, becoming a member of that country. So in this case, we're talking about America. But when have we learned about it? When have we learned about the rights of that country or for that person? When have we learned about that? Yeah, so remember, what did the Nuremberg Laws do? Well, the Nuremberg Laws took citizenship away. Away from Jewish people, didn't it? So they were no longer allowed to be part of that country. So now what we're looking at is, we're still looking at citizenship, but now it's, instead of having it taken away, it's how you can become a citizen. So what did Native Americans have to do to become a citizen? Can you remember? and then what else? So let's have a look. Three pictures to help you out there. Well, they could have married a citizen. Now that's interesting because that was actually banned for Jewish people. So Jewish people weren't allowed to marry a German person in Germany. So now we've got the direct opposite. So they could either marry a citizen, they had to pay tax, or they could join the army. And now this is going to be really, really important because that is what we're going to look at in just a second. Okay? So remember, we're answering the question, how did attitudes change? We've looked at what it was like before. And then we're going to look at what actually changes now. Okay, so quick fire question. When was World War One? Who lost and who won? So it was 1914, 1918. So Germany lost. What happened in 1919 as a direct result of Germany losing World War One? Remember to pause it to give yourself time to actually answer these questions, otherwise you're just never going to have a chance. Okay, so 1919, Treaty of Versailles. Okay, Treaty of Versailles. Now, World War One. Remember, millions died, absolutely millions. Now, Native Americans became soldiers. Okay, so Native Americans became soldiers. So there's there with a gun. Okay, I'm just going to put NA next to them so we know they're Native Americans. Now they fought like all of the soldiers. Now World War One was horrendous, and what happened was people died. Okay, people died. In total, around 12,000 Native American soldiers died in World War One. Okay, huge numbers, huge numbers. Now, America was in the war, obviously, that's why the Native Americans were there. And they won, okay, they won. So when they came back home, people were cheering, people were clapping. You know, people would have had signs up saying heroes. Okay, people would have been absolutely ecstatic that their soldiers came home and won. Okay, absolutely loving it. And this applies to Native Americans as well. Okay, so it's not just white Americans, it's Native Americans. Okay, so the soldiers came back as heroes. So they've got the medals on their chest there, heroes. Okay, look at that awful drawing. I went from a stick man to a knot, but they came back as heroes. So they've got people cheering, people clapping. Yeah, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. But how are they being treated at home? Answer that question. How are they being treated at home? Okay, so how are they actually being treated? Well, are they all allowed to vote? No, they're not. They're not all allowed to vote. Are they all citizens? No, they're not all citizens. What's happening to their way of life? What's happening to their way of life? What happened to them being hunters? What happened to them being very spiritual? What happened to their names? Remember, all of this was assimilated. So before World War One, they're treated awfully. They go to war, and people recognise them as heroes. Are you going to treat your hero like this? No, you're not. Okay? So, because of World War One, treatment changes. So the treatment changes. Now we're going to look at a few of those, but first off, just to get yourself thinking, what changes would you make? What changes would you make? Have a think about it. Pause it to give yourself a chance. Okay, pause it to give yourself a chance to answer that question. Okay, so keep thinking about what you would have done and then see if you were right, okay? So you can give yourself a tick or a cross if you're right or wrong. So the first change that happens is the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act. Okay, so remember how Native Americans were going to be citizens before? Well, they had to get married, they had to join the army, or they had to pay tax, okay? You have to do all of those things to become become citizens of the US. That all changed, and now all Native Americans equal citizens. So this is in 1924. What happened 11 years later in Germany that meant the exact opposite? What happened 11 years later that meant the exact opposite? 1935. Okay, well that's the Nuremberg Laws. Okay? Alright, now, so that's the first change. So, have a think, were you right, were you wrong? Okay, have a look, why do you think you're right, why do you think you're wrong? Right, and then tell me how this might help. How might this help? Okay? Right, well, they can now vote. So now they can start helping to change laws, can't they? Imagine if the president makes a law to say Native Americans are forced to live on a reservation. If they can't vote, they can't change it. Now they can change it, or now they can start to help to change it. Okay? Now the next change happens in 1928. 1928. Second change. And we've got to be careful with this. It is the Merriam Report, not the Miriam Report, the Merriam Report. Now this is an interesting report. What this looks at how Native Americans are treated. How Native Americans are treated. So remember, they're assimilated, so they go to school. They go in one way, they come out another. So they go in a Native American who believes about spirituality and cares about nature, and who hunts and who is nomadic and lives in a tribe, and they come out, well, the idea was they came out, you know, dressed like an American, they believed in religion, and that was them. What the Merriam Report said is this wasn't helping. They actually said this was grossly inadequate. Grossly inadequate. What this means is big or massive failure. What it said was the health of Native Americans and the amount of money they had was poor. So they were really unhealthy, really poor, which meant they were dying. So they were really, really poor, which meant they had poor health, which meant they were dying, okay? All because of the way they were treated. They were going to school just to become an American. Well, what did that teach them? It taught them nothing. So they said, we're going to scrap this, get rid of that, and we're going to keep school, because school's great. But now they're going to go in a Native American, they're going to come out a Native American, but they're going to be taught skills, they're going to be taught reading, they're going to be taught writing, they're going to be taught how to get a job. So might be taught how to use a spanner or a hammer, tools, skills to help them get a job. Okay, so this is all to help them get a job. Now, answer the question, how will this help? And then answer the even harder question, what is this similar to that we've looked at already in another topic. Right, don't forget to pause it to give it a hand. Alright, well, they can get a job. They can get a job and they can get money, and if they've got money, well, they're not going to be they're going to be able to afford food, so they're not going to be starving. They're going to afford nice things and live a better life. So their life is going to improve. What we call that is living standards are going to increase, get better. What is this similar to? Well, think about education. Think about education. What did Hitler do with his schools? He was training people to do things. So you could say it's a little bit like what we looked at schools in Nazi Germany, so indoctrination, things like that. Hitler was trying to teach people skills to become what? They went in a little child, they came out soldiers. And what was that called? The Hitler something. Hitler Youth. Okay, very similar to the Hitler Youth. Alright, now the last change we're looking at is in 1934. So the last change is in 1934. Oh, don't forget to give yourself a score, see how well you've got. Did you get that one right? Did you say they were going to change schools? Did you say they were going to give them better living standards by giving them better education? What this meant was, so 1934, sorry, and this is called the Indian, because that's what they called Native Americans at the time, Reorganization Act. Okay, so Indian, because that's what they called Native Americans. Reorganization Act. Reorganization is how you put things where. So now remember, years and years ago, Native Americans almost in a way, owned all the land. They wouldn't say they owned the land, they'd say the land was its own thing, but they lived there and they had control over it. Then, what happened is, as Europeans came over, they reduced how much they had. Their land was taken off them, it was stolen from them, and they were put on reservations. Now, what the 1934 Indian Organizations Act said, no more of that. It is, the government can no longer take land without their say-so. So they can buy land, but they have to pay a fair price. So this now was legal. So the 1934 Act, Indian Reorganization Act, is no more. Okay, so how's this going to help? Pause it to give yourself time. Well, they're no longer going to be moved round and round. So if they're no longer moved round and round, they're able to stay where they are. They're able to set up a life. They're able to have the job that they want. They're able to take the kids to the school that they want. They're not just waiting there for 2 months, then turfed out. They're not living in fear. Right, so their lives did get a lot better. But not hugely. They're not given full voting rights until about 1948. So it's still not amazing. Okay, now what I'd like to do is I would like you to write a brief summary, so a brief summary of 1928 Merriam Report, 1934 Indian Reorganization Act, and the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act. So write a brief, so 30 words or less, summary. That should probably take about 4 minutes. Okay, when you finish that, have a look over the notes that you've taken to help you out, or have a look through your booklet, see if you can add anything else. Okay, I'm going to add some keywords in here to give you an idea of what you need to include. Okay, now try and include those keywords on the left there. Okay, try and include those keywords. Again, that should take you 2 more minutes to add those in. But I'll quickly go over it. Right, 1924 Indian Citizenship Act, they're now full citizens, so they can get the vote for the person they want. Or this helps them anyway. Not everyone's given full voting rights, but they're given some of them. They can own land. Okay, they can own land, which means that they can vote as well. Right, 1928, this improves education, which says that education needs improving, which leads to its improvement, so that it's being taught skills which will help them get a job. Indian Reorganization Act, they're now no longer having their land taken away from them, which means that they can start to get better jobs, look for better education. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is I would like you to, as your final activity of the lesson, I would like you to tell me how were attitudes, remember this is the learning objective of the lesson, towards Native Americans change. This is like our red zone, remember? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I'd like to say what it was like before. Well, actually no, I'll let you crack on with it yourself. Right, give yourself 8 minutes to do this. So pause it, give yourself 8 minutes to answer that, and then after that I'm going to give you a little bit of help to improve your answer even better, but you need to give it a go yourself, remember. Okay, welcome back. All right, I would have said what it was like before briefly. Okay, so it was like pre-assimilation. I then would have said what changed. And you also need to say why. Okay, so I'm going to add some keywords in there for you to include. Look, blue pen, change it up. I'm a maverick. So, Merriam Reorganization, 1934, 1928, 1924. I'm not telling you what those are. You've got to separate them out into the right one. Citizenship, World War One, assimilation, education, heroes, or hero. Okay, 12,000. Let's put in. Alright, so what I'd like to do now is add those into your answer. See if you make it better. Okay. Alright, well done year 10, or whoever's watching this. Alright, if you've got any questions, remember you've got me email it to me. Email the actual red zone so I can mark it, see if you need anything or if you're missing anything that needs improving. Email me your starter questions so I can see how well you're doing and help you. For instance, if you've all got question 5 wrong, well I might put a video there to help you out on question 5, or when we get back to school go have a few lessons looking at those sorts of things. So you do need to make sure you're giving these a go, which will help my teaching be really tailored towards you. All right, as always, been a pleasure.